Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, we're going to be talking about Game 7 between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning, but we're also going to be talking about the series as a whole. The narrative going into this Game 7 had been well documented. It's the story of every other Game 7 involving the Toronto Maple Leafs. The numbers on the screen include the game last night against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And if you're just looking at the amount of goals that the Leafs have scored versus the amount that they've given up, in games where they have an opportunity to put a series away since 2018, yeah, they've been really bad in all of those games. But if you just want to take a look at the numbers from yesterday's game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, in terms of the shot attempts, the actual shots, the scoring opportunities, the high nature shot attempts, the expected goals, the Leafs lost a 2-1 hockey game in Game 7 against the defending back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, and it went down right to the final second in regulation. And if you're looking at the numbers from Game 6, it was a 4-3 loss that went to overtime, again, where all of the numbers across the board were extremely close for either team. The Tampa Bay Lightning are not the Montreal Canadiens or the Columbus Blue Jackets. And Game 6 and 7 of this series against the Lightning do not fit the mold of years past. I think the heartbreak from this year comes from knowing that the Maple Leafs were good enough to hang with the back-to-back defending Stanley Cup champions right down to the final second of Game 7, but ultimately falling short, of course. And to me, that's a different kind of heartbreak than choking against the Montreal Canadiens or the Columbus Blue Jackets. I feel for everyone on the team, obviously, but none more than Jason Spezza, who was nothing short of inspirational in this series, but is a guy that's taken league minimum 3 straight years in a row because he just wants to be here and because he loves the game so much, and he's given his absolute heart and soul to this team, dropping the gloves and fighting against the Blue Jackets in Game 4 to spark that comeback. After Tavares goes down against the Canadiens, he's got 5 points and 3 goals in that series. I don't know if he comes back or not, but I would happily welcome. The 2021 New York Islanders and this year's Toronto Maple Leafs have a lot of things in common when it comes to playing the Lightning in the playoffs and then eventually losing, I guess. Because over the last 3 years, the 2021 Islanders in the Eastern Conference Finals and this year's Leafs team were the only team to keep the series even with Tampa Bay after 4 and eventually push them to 7 games. Every other team fell behind 3-1 and were eventually eliminated in either 5 or 6 games. Now, they still lost, and I'm not looking for any moral victories or excuses 6 years after they've drafted Austin Matthews. They still don't have any playoff success. The storylines coming out of those games from the past were that their best players didn't show up when they needed them the most. But if we're looking at the stats from that top line from Game 7, the shot attempts were 16-2 in favor of the Leafs when they were on the ice. The actual shots, 6-1. And the scoring opportunities, 9-1. You can have different definitions of what showing up means because they didn't score, but it wasn't for a lack of effort. There's a difference between not scoring and playing bad and playing well and just not having any bounces go your way. If you're looking at the scoring leaders from the playoffs, their best players were their best players. During the regular season, the Maple Leafs had 6 20-goal scorers, and Ilya Mikheyev being the last one there with 21 goals in 53 games, that was primarily playing on a defense-first checking line. One area that I thought hurt the Maple Leafs in the series against the Tampa Bay Lightning was their depth scoring. Beyond the core 4 guys, they got 2 empty net goals from Ilya Mikheyev, 1 goal from Michael Bunting in Game 2, nothing from Pierre Engvall, and nothing from Anze Kasha. But I don't really want to blame Bunting and Kasha because they're both coming into these playoffs cold and coming back from injury. Kasha the concussion and Bunting the knee injury. But for Mikheyev and Engvall, they really needed more from them in this series. That checking line with David Kampf on it started the series ridiculously hot. And it was so much fun to watch them start the majority of their shifts in the defensive end and then just take it back up ice to Tampa Bay and create some offense. But as the series went along, it just got less and less and less. And then by the time we got to games 5 through 7, that checking line was really just a checking line. And then if the top guys weren't scoring, no one was really scoring for the Leafs. But the top guys did score. They scored in games 5, 6, and they played well in game 7. They just didn't get the goals. A lot of people are not going to feel like this, but because it was Tampa Bay and not Montreal or Columbus, and the fact that they played well in game 6 and they took the defending back-to-back Stanley Cup champions right down to the final minute of game 7, I'm not angry. I'm just sad and disappointed. Officiating was a topic of conversation in every game between the Leafs and the Lightning. And through the first 5 games, there was no other first round series that had more power plays than this one. It was not even close. And in games 6 and 7, there were obvious moments in the game where officiating impacted it. And in game 7, it was the disallowed goal. And the thing that you have to understand about this play is that as soon as Justin Hall makes contact with Anthony Cirelli, the referee from behind the play, the back ref, puts up his arm to signal interference. And in games 1 through 5, yeah, that's interference because absolutely everything was being called and there wasn't one thing that was being let slip through. But in games 6 and 7 of this series, the referees were very selective in what they were calling. There were similar instances like this that went uncalled in both games. And the back ref didn't signal, oh, penalty, penalty, after Tavares puts the puck in the net. He does it instantly. I think that's the most fair that I could be on that particular play. If you're a Leaf fan, I can understand how you'd be frustrated by this, especially because the Lightning tied game 6 and sent it to overtime on a goal that they scored on a 5-on-3, where the first penalty was a phantom high stick on Cal Foot from David Kampf, where Kampf's stick came up and hit him in the shoulder. And the rule reads above the shoulder. And when I hear above the shoulder, that does not include the shoulder. On the 2-1 goal, I think this is just more gamesmanship than anything, but when Muzzin and Killorn collide, Muzzin's stick gets stuck under the arm of Killorn, and Killorn just kind of chicken wings it and holds on to it, and then Muzzin doesn't have a stick to defend Nick Paul here, and TJ Brody gets kind of walked. It was a nice goal, but Muzzin has his stick, he ties him up, the goal doesn't happen. Another area that I thought really hurt the Maple Leafs in this series was their power play. It was 4 for 28 through the 7 games, and the biggest hit that they took from their regular season numbers compared to their playoff numbers was the amount of shots that they took. Tampa Bay, not just on their penalty kill, but at 5-on-5, did an amazing job just clogging up the area between the hash marks and in front of their net. And it's not that they did it with their physical play, boxing guys out and moving guys away from the front of the net. They just had amazing positioning and they had sticks in every single lane. They put 2 guys on Austin Matthews' side, and the rest of the Maple Leafs power play couldn't figure out who was going to take the shot. And they didn't really make any adjustments to give the Lightning penalty killers a different look. Like I suggested earlier in the series, hey, maybe put Marner down behind the goal line, and that changes up the way that the penalty killers have to face. Now, all of a sudden, they're turned around the opposite way, and maybe that frees someone else up for a shot. But there was not very much available in the offensive zone for the Maple Leafs between the hash marks, between the face-off dots, or even up high. But they still controlled the majority of the goals in this series at 5-on-5. And that was a big conversation in the Amazon All or Nothing series where Sheldon Keefe is having a conversation with Kyle Dubas about how this team needs to get better at scoring playoff goals against good defensive teams that don't give you as much time and space. And the Maple Leafs did score a number of goals in this series off of tips and deflections and shots through screens. Sometimes I write for theleafsnation.com, and they asked us to submit bold predictions for this year's playoffs, and I don't know where the article is at this point, but because everyone was talking about the goaltending matchup in this series and how heavily favored it was for Tampa Bay, I just jokingly threw it out there. My bold prediction being that Jack Campbell outduels Andrei Vasilevsky, but the Leafs still lose. And at 5-on-5, It's very close, but Jack Campbell has the higher save percentage. I will never tell you how to feel about the Leafs because they drive us all nuts and everyone deals with it differently. We may not agree on some things, but we could do that respectfully or civilly. And earlier in the video, I said that I didn't feel like these Leafs were the same Leafs that choked against the Blue Jackets and the Canadiens or even the Bruins. And if you go back to the regular season, and I know for a lot of people, the regular season doesn't matter, but this year's team set a franchise record for the most amount of points, wins, and wins at home. Matthews scores 60 goals and has over 100 points, and Marner finishes the year with 97. They almost have two players score 100 points in a single season for the first time ever. The closest they've ever come to that feat was 93-94 when Gilmore had like 111 or 114 and Andrechuk had 99. But both those guys did it in an 83 game season. Both played 83 games. And Matthews played 73 and Marner played 72 this year. And then they go into the playoffs and they're playing the defending back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, even though they have home ice advantage. That's the first round matchup that they got. And everyone's not too sure. Andrei Vasilevsky versus Jack Campbell. Campbell dealing with some injuries in the middle of the year. His season was really broken up into a couple of different parts. But they show up in this series. They get the 3-2 lead, and everyone's saying, here it comes. Game 6, they're not going to show up. And what do? They play their best road game of the series. And if not for some stupid penalties, who knows what happens there. And then in Game 7, they control the pace of play, but they don't get any of the bounces to go their way. Their best players were still their best players. They've broken some narratives, but not all of them. Not the most important one, anyway, because they didn't win. I'm not angry. I'm just sad because I want more. And I know they can be more. I just don't know how they can do that. I got some ideas, obviously, and we can talk about them, but for now, I don't really want to do that. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. Make sure to like the video if you did like it and subscribe for more because more is always on the way. But I will be taking a week off. I'll be back next Saturday. I'm just going to let this breathe a little bit, and I also have some chores that I've been neglecting, so going to get those done. Who knows? Maybe I'll be back a little bit sooner. Maybe I'll just be bored. Maybe I'll miss you guys. I'll see you all in the next one.